Something drastic will have to take place. And none of that resolves the real issue. The real issue is that they have put themselves in two different boxes, two different catch-22s. Can Joe Biden still win? The polls are terrible. Post-debate, he has been tanking. The Democrats are in disarray, trying to decide whether or not Biden stays or goes. Now, after Saturday's event at Trump's rally, the odds are Joe Biden will be on the ticket, but can he win? Can he defeat Donald Trump? And how did they get into this situation? We talked about it a little bit earlier on the podcast, but the left have put themselves in a catch-22 actually on both sides of the issue. They have a catch-22 with Biden, the candidate, and now they have a catch-22 with Trump, the candidate. And I described that a little bit earlier, that either he's actually like Hitler, and you have to keep talking about him, that he is an existential threat to democracy, and which means you're pushing forward the rhetoric that everyone, yourself included, have now said probably led someone to make this kind of crazy decision to try and shoot Donald Trump. Or you have to admit that the last 8 years of calling him an existential threat was really just exaggerations and lies. That's quite the catch-22. They're also in a catch-22 with Biden, the candidate, because for 4 years, they have gone out of their way to gaslight the American people into thinking if you even question Joe Biden's senility, if you even question how sharp Joe is, then you are ageist, that you are setting Trump up to win, that you don't care about democracy. All of these people who would go on to the news channels and be like, I'll be honest, when I'm in a meeting with Joe Biden, I can't even keep up with the guy. He has so many questions. I mean, I just carpal tunnel trying to write out all his questions. And then we're just supposed to think that we're all going insane as we watch him in speeches and go, I don't think this guy's okay. And so the dam broke at the debate. It was just obvious. And because they've been lying about Joe Biden as a candidate for 4 years, the leaks started coming because everyone is now covering their own butts. It's like, they know they're guilty of lying about this. And so they're going to be the first to come forward and say, no, what actually happened was, and really he has to go to bed about 6 p.m. And really, I mean, he's been trailing off for a while and he hasn't been the same. And he hasn't been, a leak. And so there's a huge fracture on both sides. And both of them come from lying. That's what it comes down to. Ultimately, the decision to lie and exaggerate the quote unquote threat of Donald Trump and to lie and exaggerate about the cognitive state of Joe Biden. And both of those lies have come back and are killing them now. Psalm 52 says, like a sharpened razor, your tongue devises destruction, working treachery. You love evil instead of good, lying instead of speaking truthfully. You love any words that destroy, you treacherous tongue. This is why God will bring you down forever. He will take you, ripping you out of your tent. He will uproot you from the land of the living. What does that mean? It means you tell lies, you will get got. And when you get got, it will be bad. It will be a massive fall and a massive mistake. And in part, it was also hubris. Biden could have just not debated and potentially won the election. He could have just said, I'm not going to debate a convicted felon. You've seen him as president. You've seen me as president. You don't need a debate. We'll just go to the ballot box and it'll be fine. But he had to do it. And so he got up in front of the world and just the facade broke and everybody saw. And it comes down to lies. Everyone around lying. This is actually how Saul lost the kingdom. Saul was the first king of Israel. And we read in 1 Samuel 15, it says, early in the morning, Samuel got up to confront Saul. Samuel was the prophet. It was reported to Samuel, Saul went to Carmel, where he set up a monument for himself. And then he turned around and went down to Gilgal. And when Samuel came to him, Saul said, may the Lord bless you. I've carried out the Lord's instructions. Now, what actually happened is the Lord's instructions were to not take any of the cattle, any of the livestock from their enemies. And they did. And so immediately, when you've done something wrong, and you see this a lot in kids. And so the first thing they do is lie specifically about what they've done before you've even asked about it. When your kid's little and you walk in the house and you haven't even asked about the cookies. And they're like, Dad, good news. I didn't eat any or all of the cookies, And it's like,
wow.
Hey, dude, now I definitely think you ate all the cookies. So Saul says, I have carried out all the Lord's instructions. And Samuel replied, then what is this sound of sheep, goats, and cattle I hear? Saul answered, the troops brought them. It wasn't me. It was the troops. I mean, I command the troops and I'm totally in charge of them. They would never do anything without my permission. But the troops brought them from the Amalekites and spared the best sheep, goats, and cattle in order to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. So it's like, okay, we did the thing we weren't supposed to, but we did it for a really good reason. So now that we have all these great goats, we're going to make a sacrifice. Stop, exclaimed Samuel. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Samuel continued, although you considered yourself unimportant, haven't you become the leader of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, sent you on a mission, said, go and completely destroy the sinful Amalekites, fight against them until you've annihilated them. So why didn't you obey the Lord? Why did you rush on and plunder what was evil in the Lord's sight? And Saul doubled down. I did obey the Lord. I went on the mission the Lord gave me. I brought back the king. I completely destroyed the Amalekites. He just goes on and on and on. And Samuel replied to Saul, I will not return with you because you rejected the word of the Lord. The Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Saul lost the kingdom over lies. And that is what happens. God gives you a family, and if you choose to navigate your role in that family through lies, eventually it could destroy your family. God gives you a career, and everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has drops in their business, but you choose to lie to cover them up. Ultimately, it will come back and destroy your career. You start a business and you build that business on lies. Ultimately, it will destroy you. You will lose the kingdom. And there's a chance Joe Biden is going to lose the presidency specifically because they have not been honest about who he is, and they have not been honest about who his opponent is. And when you have an opponent, you just got to be honest. You may think they're a terrible person, but stop short of exaggeration because it will come back to bite you. You see this all the time. You see this in relationships when two people break up that have been dating and have the same friends, and they start telling each other how they're just the worst person on earth. And it turns out they're not the worst person on earth. You're just mad because y'all broke up. And now you're the one who looks bad. You look like a bad person. Like sometimes people break up and then they're fighting over who gets to keep the friend group. Typically, the person who gets to keep the friend group is the person who handles it well, who doesn't lie, who doesn't exaggerate. These little lies come back to kill us. And so in 2020, people were questioning the cognitive ability of Joe Biden, and they went out of their way to gaslight the population into believing that he's as sharp as he's ever been. This is the best version of him we've ever got. He's the exact same. He's just a lot wiser because of all of his years in politics. And all of that was a farce. I tell my kids this about relationships. It's like, man, it's the lies you tell in the first couple of weeks of a relationship that come back and destroy the relationship 6 months later. You have to be honest. So can Joe Biden still win? Is there any chance at this point? Well, in politics, I think the best position is to always say anything could happen. I mean, things just can turn on an absolute dime. None of us saw what was coming Saturday and the crazy, crazy impact that that's going to have in the race. Anything could happen. Can Joe Biden win how he is currently running with his current ticket? I think it's going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult. I think he would have to do something wild. And I really haven't heard anyone talking much about this. And to be clear, you can tell me in the comments, I don't know the political mechanisms for some of this stuff, but I think Joe will be the candidate, barring some kind of health catastrophe between now and the election. But Joe has to become honest that he knows his age and that his vice president matters more than any vice president in history. That's a problem for him because the only person by polling data who is less popular than Joe is Kamala. Kamala Harris has the lowest favorability rating of any vice president in the modern world. Her favorability rating is lower than Dick Cheney's right after he shot a guy in the face.
Wow.
It's horrible. She is truly one of the least competent politicians we've seen in a very, very long time. And naturally, she's not very likable. I think for Joe to have any choice, he is going to have to make the very difficult decision to swap VPs. I think there is a way to do this. I just don't know if there's the political mechanisms for it. And it's not going to happen. But if it happened, it would at least give him a fighting chance. And so if this is possible, then this would be my, if I was his consultant, this would be my suggestion. I think you got to get rid of Kamala. And I think there's a way to do it. I think you make a swap. And who actually goes under the bus is Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was already under impeachment. He is over the DOJ. He has allowed the border to be a huge problem, which is a thorn in the side of the entire campaign. And so you take out the attorney general, you throw him all the way under the bus, and you make Kamala the attorney general. Now, I don't think that would be good for America. I'm just saying, is there a plausible scenario for Joe Biden to have a fighting chance? The reason it would make sense is because Kamala was the attorney general for California. She was known as the top cop. And so you could frame it that this is what she's good at. The vice president was not her sweet spot. She had a hard time finding her footing. However, she knows how to get this done. Now, what's real is her record in California as attorney general was awful and plagued with corruption, right? But that's not the media spin. The media spin is that she was the top cop and she was a great prosecutor. It's not true, but that was the spin. And so you could lean into that. She's still in the administration. She has an incredibly important job. And you could say, man, I made Kamala the border czar, but Merrick Garland was just stonewalling her. So we're getting rid of him. She's the attorney general now. And now your vice president is open. And so you can bring in whoever ranks the highest and you can just be honest. I think as Joe Biden, I'm going to make it all 4 years. I feel great. I know I had a bad debate. I think it's great. It's all lies. It's gaslighting, but you could go with it. But I know you're concerned, America. And so look at Amy Klobuchar. She is in the wings and very competent. Look at Gavin Newsom. Look at, whoever it might be, Gretchen Whitmer. You got to get a new VP because everyone believes that will be the actual president if they vote for you. You got to find some way to reposition Kamala where she doesn't completely blow up your spot. And someone's going to have to go into the bus. I would say it's Merrick Garland. None of that is going to happen. There may not even be political mechanisms at this point for that to happen. That's beyond my level of political knowledge. Something drastic will have to take place. And none of that resolves the real issue. The real issue is that they have put themselves in two different boxes, two different catch-22s. I think they will haunt them for the rest of time. Of course, it's an election season. Anything can happen. And we all know that, and we should be aware of that. It's election season. And once again, I am just shocked that these are the two candidates that we came up with. But things are getting very interested. We're in unprecedented territory as Christians. We should stay close to God. We should be peacemakers. We should love people without condition, even on the other side of the aisle from us. And we should wake up every day, not seeking for our politician to get into the White House. That's great if it happens. We should be seeking the kingdom of God. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed so you can stay up to date with all new content. And if you want early access, exclusive content, and monthly live Q&As, make sure to check out patreon.com/ClaytonTyner.